Hey guys, this is Liz Barnett, fitness and food coach. And if you don't know me, I'm based in northern New Jersey and in the New York City area. And this is WTF Wednesday. I apologize in advance for the slightly unflattering angle, but I could have my hands free that way and check my notes on the computer. WTF Wednesday is just sort of my little passion project because I've been in the fitness and nutrition industry for a long time now, full-time, 10 years, and so much has changed. There's so much more information and availability and access, which is great, but that also means there can be a lot of confusion and sometimes some misinformation. So WTF Wednesday is my opportunity to kind of pick a health, wellness, fitness, nutrition trend or topic and sort of cut the crap, demystify any of the myths, and just give you the facts. So if there is more information that you want, or if you want to dive in a little more deeply, I'm really going to try to hit like the top level items, but you can always contact me if you want more information or a little clarification. So today we're talking about high intensity interval training, otherwise known as HIIT, H-I-I-T. And I decided to talk about this today because it's January, people are recommitting to the resolutions, they're hitting the gym, they're hitting workout classes, and HIIT is definitely one of those sorts of types of workouts that people gravitate toward or they hear about as being really efficient, really effective. And it can be those things, and it can also be very safe, despite what you might have heard. But it's all about how you approach it, like with most things, right? So if you see me looking over, I'm just checking my notes. As I just mentioned, HIIT is known for being efficient, so it's really good if you're time crunched, and effective. The part of the efficacy of it has to do with its supposed afterburn effect, right? Which I'll talk a little bit more about. So the idea that you're burning calories, your metabolism is raised even after the workout. It also is sometimes known as being unsafe, and that might be because you or someone you know got injured doing it. And listen, there's a potential for injury for just about any kind of workout, but HIIT's really important that you approach it correctly. So you want to make sure, just like any other workout, that you're warming up properly, you're cooling down properly, and all of your movements are safe and effective. It can certainly be time efficient, right? True HIIT is typically done in 20 minutes or less. So it can be as short as a few minutes, and it can go as long collectively as about 20 minutes. Once you get past that 20-minute mark, there's a couple things to consider, right? HIIT is meant to be really intense, which we'll talk about more. And there's only so long that you can hold up that intensity. If you're actually working to your capacity or to your submax capacity, you're not going to be able to do pretty much anything, even with interval of rest, for longer than 20 minutes. So I always like to think about, like, I see different kind of gyms, they have a Tabata class, and Tabata is a type of HIIT, which we'll talk about. And Tabata is traditionally like a 4-minute block, but some workout classes, they make a whole 45-minute class of Tabata. And that just doesn't make sense because Tabata is meant to be so intense and so effective that you can't do it for 45 minutes, right? So that's just sort of different people, different places, kind of like hopping on trends and making them their own. And that's fine. Like, it might be a good workout class, but I don't want you to think that it's true HIIT or it's true Tabata, which we'll go into. As little as 5 or 10 minutes can be effective. So one of my favorite ways to incorporate HIIT training into my own workouts and with my clients is a small part of a workout session. So once you properly warmed up, foam rolled, did dynamic stretching, whatever it is you need to do, maybe do a 4-minute Tabata or 5 minutes of intervals. And there's a few reasons to do that. It gets your heart rate up, it gets you moving, it gets your neuromuscular system kind of fired up, and you'll get the benefits of the HIIT training as well as whatever you're doing after, right? HIIT training usually is very technical, so maybe it's doing something like squat jumps or sprinting, right? Something where you really want to be on your A game and on point. You certainly don't want to be wobbling around and exhausted and falling over, right? That's how you get injured. So incorporating HIIT at the beginning of a workout while you're still fresh and you're focused, right? You'll be able to execute it more efficiently and properly and safely. And then you may, in fact, get some of those benefits of the afterburn after the fact, which we'll talk about in a second. Well, you know what, let's just talk about it now. So probably one of the most buzzed about parts of HIIT training is the elusive afterburn effect, which in fitness science terms is known as EPOC, or exercised post-oxygen consumption. And it's what you think about, right, what those words mean, the sort of amount of oxygen you're consuming post-workout. It's a measure of basically, or has to do with, I should say, your anaerobic, which is your non-oxygen using energy system, and then your aerobic energy system. So aerobics, things you do for a long, steady state, or a mostly steady state, something that you can do for a continuous amount of time, let's just say 20 minutes or more. Things like jogging, maybe running, certainly walking, your more traditional sort of like aerobics classes. Anaerobic means without oxygen, and that's your more high intensity stuff. Things like parts of CrossFit, sprinting, again, doing plyometrics like box jumping. Those sorts of activities tend to be more anaerobic. So if you've ever done a workout and maybe you're doing like burpees and you're heaving and you're breathing hard and you're trying to catch your breath, that's because you're using your anaerobic system. There's benefits to both, right? Here's the thing. Technically, when you're using your aerobic system, so when you are doing something for a long, slow, steady pace that you can continuously do over a period of time, you're actually going to be burning more fat, right? A higher percentage, I should say, of fat. That's why I think part of the reason the whole like aerobic trends and hitting the elliptical and all that came about, because yes, you are burning a higher percentage of fat than if you do a high intensity, shorter session. The thing is, those more intense workouts, they are enabling you to potentially burn more calories overall beyond the session. So that's kind of the afterburn, right? A particular workout class I do that I really enjoy for various reasons, so I'm definitely not knocking it. They're very much based on the fact for this afterburn effect, right? If you get your heart rate up into a certain zone, you're going to burn extra calories after the workout. It's not an exact science. Everyone is hugely different, and it depends on so many different things, not even related to your workout. I did read a recent study that said, yes, for most men, they'll, depending on the workout, they'll get that EPOC for about 24 hours post exercise, post session, and you're getting all those benefits. Women, more like 3 hours, and a lot of that has to do with hormones. Maybe it has something to do with how hard you're able to push, but the idea is it varies from person to person. So some of these estimates are just estimates, right? You don't want to assume just because you did a really hard workout that you can eat like you're going to the electric chair for the next 2 days, right? So that's just something to consider. You should also, though, now that I mentioned it, pay attention. If you do a really high intensity workout, notice your hunger levels after. You may actually find yourself hungry. A lot of people fall into that trap where they exercise, especially if they exercise really intensely, and then they like overeat after. So I'm not saying don't eat. I'm not saying, reduce your eating, but just really be mindful and pay attention. You might need to refuel more. You might not be refueling properly post-workout, but that's a whole other topic. The EPOC, the afterburn, is a real thing. Again, it's contingent on working out really intensely. So coming back to that Tabata example, the Tabata style of working out, I don't know if you know this, it's named after the Japanese researcher Izumi Tabata, who created it. And basically what he did is he did a study with some really elite cyclists, and he kind of, after all his research, he designed this sort of framework of 20 seconds of really intense activity followed by what should be 10 seconds of rest. And you repeat that cycle 8 times, so it's 4 minutes total. So 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And, these studies reveal that, all the things that you associate with high intensity interval training, the afterburn, strength, power gains after, all that stuff. But you have to understand these were super elite cyclists that were pushing themselves to their max for 4 minutes, right? So if you're going back to that 45-minute Tabata class I mentioned, like, that's not Tabata. That's someone, taking a framework and applying it into another format. And that doesn't mean that doesn't have effects, but you can't expect the same sort of effects that the original method had, right? So Tabata is one really popular type. That's something that might be great to add in the beginning of your workout, right? Do your warm up, hop on the treadmill, 4 minutes of Tabata, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and then whatever you're going to do after that. That's a way I like to kind of certainly break a sweat. Sort of another umbrella term for other types of HIIT training is fartlek, which in Swedish means speed play, and that's sort of less structured. So that might mean you head to your local high school track and you kind of sprint a quarter mile and then walk 3/4 of a mile, and then next time maybe you sprint a half a mile and then you walk a half a mile. So that's just less structured, and there can still be benefits. I think what's important with things like fartlek training, where you're maybe not necessarily using either a time or a distance, that you're tuned into your body, right? You're tuned into how hard you're working. Can you push yourself a little harder? Another good example of how to apply fartlek, if you're outside, maybe you're running around your neighborhood, right? You see a stop sign, you sprint to that stop sign, and then you walk to recover to the next one, and so on and so forth. So that's just kind of like a less structured way of approaching HIIT training, and I think that's an important point. everyone associates HIIT training with being really, really hard, really, really intense, really, really high impact. And yes, it can be those things, but there's also recent research that older people can benefit from high intensity training. You have to shift what your definition of high intensity is, right? So for an older person, maybe who's, walking out in the neighborhood, maybe that means you power walk right to that stop sign and then recover. There are still benefits, overall health benefits, right? Everybody's concerned with things like how many calories we're burning and body fat and weight and all that stuff, but there are additional benefits to HIIT training for your cardiovascular system, for your power output, right? It goes well beyond just calories in and calories out. So, the key components, I think, that you have to consider when you're approaching HIIT training are intensity, one, right? It has to be more intense than whatever your baseline is. Time, right? Are you pushing for 20 seconds or are you trying to push for a minute? Once you hit that minute mark, again, we change energy systems. So even if you are doing a 20-minute workout, you kind of can't push that hard beyond a minute before that aerobic energy system kicks in. So you want to make sure if you are working hard for a minute, you're giving yourself the appropriate amount of recovery, which we'll talk about in a second. But, how long are you doing something and how intensely? You can push harder for 20 seconds, most likely, than you can for a minute, which is every fitness instructor's favorite sort of motivational cue, right? You can do anything for 30 seconds, maybe not, but just something to consider. Then it's important to balance that with the recovery. So however hard and however long you're going, you have to give it an appropriate recovery. Tabata's only 4 minutes, so you can get away with that 10 seconds of rest. But if you are doing a longer workout, you want to build in more recovery, not only within that workout, but across your workout regimen. So last thing I'll say about this, HIIT training is not meant to be done every day. The aforementioned workout that I mentioned that I don't do it every day. I do it maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Because if you are really pushing yourself to your submax, if you really are giving all that output, you need that time to recover. So if you have been engaging in HIIT training and maybe you're either have stopped seeing results, maybe you have plateaued, maybe you're actually, slipping in the other direction. Maybe you're seeing like less muscle tone and maybe more like body fat, or you're having trouble sleeping. Those are all really important things to consider when it comes to HIIT training. So for most people, 1 to 3 times a week is more than enough, unless you're like a super high level athlete. If you're really, participating in some sort of sport, that's different, obviously, but you can get really good results for just 1 to 3 times a week. That might just mean at the beginning of your gym session, you add a little something. Maybe you work out from home and you don't have a ton of time. Great, a little HIIT session in the morning, get your blood pumping, get your heart rate up, get you feeling good. That might be, what it looks like for you. And I think that's the other important thing just to consider, like how your body responds to it. There was a period of time where I was under a lot of stress and I was seeing a lot of hormonal imbalances, and I stopped doing the high intensity workouts because that was not the time for me to be doing them. My body was already under stress, under a high state of intensity, and you need to take that into consideration. So I hope this was helpful. If you have additional questions, you can always email me, liz@lizbarnett.com, or find me on Instagram. It's @LizBarnettSimmons. And I hope you learned something new today. Let me know what you hear about next time, and have a great day.